Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I didn't know if I was on or not. Nobody just wants. No, it's not a good morning, is it? Is it early? Is it early? Not a good morning. Has anything happened over the last 24 hours that makes people think, well, maybe it's not such a good morning? Do what?
He lived.
He lived. Well, you know, I got to thinking about that, and I started a deal last week about, things that Jesus called, words and names that Jesus called himself, and we talked about he called himself the bread of life, and we kind of went into how that what does that mean to us today, and this week we were going to talk about, he called himself the light of the world, the light of the world. He called himself the light of life. But then this thing happened yesterday. And then when this thing happened yesterday, I got to thinking about that, and I said, you know what? Our country is in a turmoil. And I'm not going to sit here and talk politics. That's not what church is about. But what there are some things in the Bible that talks to us about government and how we should be toward our government and how we should act and how we should be. And I got to thinking that maybe because of the time of year it is, because of the possible changes that might be going on over the next few months, that we look and see what the Bible says about government and how we're to act and how we're to conduct ourselves. And so this morning we're going to talk about some hard things, because the hard thing is Tim had a lesson here on the 4th, right around the 4th, about the 6th or 7th or something, right along in there. Or no, it was before the 4th. Anyway, and his lesson said that because in our country, let's not look at the freedoms that we have as freedoms that God gives us. In our country, we have freedoms. We have freedoms, and we can do some things. We can, because we're free to do that, because we're Americans and we have our opinions, and we can vocalize our opinions. We can talk about our opinions. We can and we can walk over everybody else to get what we want. That's what the world says. So let's look at a little bit about government and how we should be. So let's turn over to, does anybody know where I'm going? Anybody know where I'm going? In the Bible. Let's go to Romans 13. Romans 13. And we're going to read Romans 13, 1 through 7. And I'm reading out of the New King James today. It just depends on which Bible I pick up. I have to look, because sometimes it's the King James, sometimes it's the New King James, sometimes it's an NIV, sometimes it's Romans, the 13th chapter, the first 7 verses. Let every soul should be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authority that exists are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinances of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. For the rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of the authorities? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For he is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is God's minister to avenge, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore, you must be subject not only because of the wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for they are God's minister, attending continually to this very thing. Render therefore all that is their due, taxes to whom taxes are due, customs to whom customs, fears to whom fears, and honor to whom honor. So, do we ever talk bad about the government? I told someone we were going to step on toes this morning.
We don't say nothing in there about not talking bad about the government.
It doesn't?
It just says you gotta give them all your money.
Is that,
What they say, but
that's
you can talk bad about them all day long.
go to Titus.
Okay, let's go with that.
Let's go to Titus. Let's go to Titus. Let's go to Titus, 3rd chapter. Yeah, first verse. Titus, first chapter. Remind them to be in subject to rulers and authorities, to obey, to be ready for every good work, to speak evil of no one, to be peaceable, gentle, showing all humility to all men.
So you're saying if I criticize Trump or Biden, I'm speaking evil? No.
But if you're speaking evil, you're speaking evil.
Okay, so I can criticize and not speak evil.
Discernment and indignation
I just want to make sure where he's sleeping tonight.
To that heart matter, where you speak from, where your heart is going to be what discerns whether that's being spoken or it's true.
Now, let's back out just a little bit and say, have we ever spoken evil against the government? I mean, if you haven't, raise your hand. If you have never spoken anything evil about the government, please raise your hand. Really? You have never spoken anything evil.
Yes, I have
You-
never once said, I want the government to fail, I want the government to have bad things happen to them, I want evil things to happen, I want
Whoa.
assassinations or
No.
murders. No, I have never spoken anything evil against the government. I have spoken against the evil the government has done, absolutely, and will continue to do so.
Okay.
But evil from my mouth towards the government, absolutely not. I have more respect than that. I was taught better than that.
Don't be putting that on me. Don't be putting that taught on me. That, for y'all who don't know, that is my son, and that is my wife over there. So now you can see the big resistance going on here.
Let me ask you this, Will, since I know what you have said, have you spoke evil against your country?
I have spoken evil things that I should not have spoken. Now, have I said, I don't think America is where I want to be? No. But But how many times do we make fun of and criticize our president?
A lot. That's not evil.
It's not? So, okay. Does anybody think that has anybody ever said, he's not fit for office?
That's not speaking evil, that's,
But it still goes back, are we respectful? Are we being respectful?
We know where you're going. We know.
You know where you're going?
You want us to be good.
What? You want us to be, what? Say it out loud.
You want us to be good people, we're trying.
That's right. But we all fail, don't we?
I think it looks a little bit different after the advent of democracy. So at this time, every governing authority over these people would be someone who had either willed themselves to power or was given and put into power. There is a strategic difference when our government system is founded by us.
And
We have chosen a method where we have representative government. The people he's speaking to here did not. They never had and never would up until probably about 400, 500 years later, right? So that's why you're looking at something that, yeah, I agree with you, and I do think we should respect our authorities. But this is very different when you have a single leader who is put into power by an entity, whether that entity was force or whether that entity was divinity, right?
okay.
There is a little bit of a difference,
So do we believe that God has put our government in place?
Yep.
how could he not have? Whether it's for the good of the country or the bad of the country, good Lord put things in place for things to happen the way he wants
Yes.
them to happen.
I think that a lot of this, whether or not we speak evil, or a lot of that depends on where our focus is. If our focus is on God, then we could recognize, just like they did, Caesar is not a God-honoring person.
Right.
But at the same time, if your focus is on God, then I don't need to speak evil about Caesar. I recognize he's not honoring God. I'm going to honor God. I think our problem many times ends up being that we look to our government to fulfill a role that only God can fulfill.
There
And
you
so
go.
if we can look and say, God is on the throne, and this guy's charging me taxes right now,
Yeah.
then it's a lot easier to, I mean, I don't think that it means that you won't be critical, but you don't need to be anything beyond righteous.
But will you-
Because God's on the throne.
But will you still pay your taxes?
Yeah. And you'll still do all
Yes.
the things which
Second Timothy 2:4 says, paraphrases, a good soldier doesn't entangle himself in the cares and the affairs of the world.
There you go. There you go. I guess one of the things that I wanted, and I wanted discussion like this, I do, because one of the things I wanted to leave here this morning with y'all is the fact that, we're all going to have differences of opinions. And, I'm not getting into any, but you got the Democrats, you got the Republicans, you've got the liberals, you've got the, what's the other phrase? The libertarians is what I was trying. You've got all, and each one is fighting for this, and this one's fighting for this, and this one's fighting for this. And in this room here, there may be one of each, or two of each, or 10 of each, or whatever. But that's what? Not the affairs of Christ. Our life does not evolve. If our life is where it needs to be, our life does not evolve around who's in charge in the government. Because,
I guess if you look at North Korea, you might disagree.
When it affects,
Say it
I
again.
said, if you live in North Korea or Iran, you might disagree. But for us, you're right, it shouldn't and doesn't. But if you live in certain places around the world, it is, that does have a day-to-day effect on your life every single day.
It has.
For us, we don't, because we
it-
have the ability to work.
It has, even North Korea, it has a direct effect on the way they can physically be and work. But where is Jesus? Where is God in all that? In all that, where's God? He's where? He's in your heart. So it doesn't matter what government, it is. If I'm doing what's good, if I'm doing what's right, no harm will come to me. Now, does that mean that you will not be put in jail? No, that does not what I mean. But where is your life? And you look at the whole thing. Where is your life at? Is your life in the physical things of this world, or is your life in the spiritual things of the world? And if our life is in the spiritual things of the world, do the physical things of the world matter? It,
work hard, be humble, and don't worry about things of the world.
so, where are we at? Where are we at? Do you think God puts people in powers and authorities? Would it be the first time that he did if he did it now? No, because all through the Old Testament. When did the Israelites fight? When did they fight? Didn't they fight when God told them to fight? When they were in Egyptian bondage, there was many, they could have rose up and fought. Did they? No. When did they fight? When God told them to fight. Right? When do we fight? When should we fight? When should we fight against our government? And how should we fight against our government? Okay, go ahead.
Acts chapter 4, Peter and John go before the authorities over them, their own Jewish government, and they get down to verse 19. You know, they've been reprimanded for preaching this gospel of Jesus. And you get down to verse 19. Peter and John answer him, whether it's right in the sight of God for us to listen to you rather than God, you decide. We're unable to stop speaking about what we've seen and heard. So they are openly disagreeing with their own government, but they have complete respect for the authority that God's given that government. And they say, hey, if they pull no punches, here's what God's charged us with doing, so it's what we're doing. But you decide what you need to do with us. We'll submit to this. We'll submit to what our government, do your work, whatever you got to do to us. But they go right on doing what God's charged them with doing. They have a clear directive. It's in opposition to what their government would have them do, but they still recognize the authority
Of the government.
that their own government has over them, and say, hey, it's up to you. You decide. We recognize you have the authority. They don't revolt. They don't fight it. Just go on doing what they're doing. Yeah, we'll do what we got to do. You do what you got to do.
That's right. In our country, how do we change government? Say it again? Vote. Is it okay to run for office? Why not? Nothing wrong with that. We have avenues to change things that we don't think are right. But do we have the right, do we have the RIGHT to riot? to stand against the government, to openly say, no, that's all wrong. We're not doing that.
Yeah, you can petition the government. Are you talking about from a legal standpoint or from a?
From a spiritual standpoint. Yeah, because, see, I don't care about the legal standpoint. I don't care about the legal standpoint. Because there's things that are legal that still aren't right, you know.
So are
And-
you asking riot, R-I-O-T?
Or, yeah. Instead of R-I-G-H-T, R-O-I-T.
Riot.
Do you have the right to write?
Well,
Right.
we not only have a right, but we have the responsibility to do so.
You think so?
Yes, sir.
And what are you going to write about?
You have the right to protest, you have the responsibility to vote.
That's right. But when I'm talking about riot, I'm not talking about going to a rally and saying, hey, I don't agree with that. I'm talking about where you go in and you start busting out windows and stealing stuff. Riot.
We're talking about R-I-O-T.
Yes.
Not W-R-I-T.
No. Do you have the R-I-G-H-T to R-I-O-T?
No,
There you go. That's what I was saying.
we thought you were saying R-I-W-R-I-T. Right.
Oh,
Because that's what you said.
see, that's okay. All right. Are you with me now? Are we on the same page now?
Well, I was just going to say that my overall takeaway on this is that there's no additional standard here. The same rules apply for how we should treat our government as we should treat every other human being on this planet. That's the core of this. There's no difference. They're not exempt that you get to do something different there. They're human souls, and we're held to the same level of accountability for those folks as we are to every other person.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Do you think we do that? Or if you're in a put,
Individuals like that.
No, correct. Just as bad as we are for.
We're not good at loving our enemies.
No.
we're not. Yes, sir.
I was going to say that we, being a part of a different kingdom that works a very different way, the way that we fight is also very different because our enemy isn't flesh and blood. I think one of the things that stops us from seeing success is that we're not fully submitting to the king in our own way. Because it doesn't matter what the laws say, if the heart of the people is such that they say, well, I don't want to kill my children, my unborn children. They could have whatever on the books. There would be no more of that issue if the heart of the people was turned to God. And that comes back to me. And what authority am I going to give the king in my life? And if I give him that authority in my life and he transforms my life as he ought to, then other people will see, and hopefully they'll desire that relationship with God that they see that I've found. And I think so many times we start using the tools of a different country and we expect God's benefits from using their tools. But if we use God's tools for God's means, we'll find so much more success in the way that the Spirit wants us to see it in our country and in the world.
Yes. That is, and I'm trying to think, there was,
And one of those tools is praying for our government.
absolutely,
Praying for Biden, we should be praying for all of them up there.
absolutely,
That they will have a change of heart, that they will do what is right.
absolutely.
In Romans 12, I'm sorry.
Many times that's all we can do.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wanting to say earlier, when you were asking, do we ever say anything against the government? I know that God is in control. but I'm constantly saying, Lord, help me to understand why this is happening and what can I do to help change it. That's the whole solution.
The whole deal, it's a matter of heart. I mean, it is. I mean, when we boil down everything, it's a matter of heart. I mean, it goes down. I lost my thought.
Romans 12:18 tells us, whatever's possible for us, we live in peace with the world.
Yes,
And if you're out there amongst the lost, instead of taking the gospel and you're losing your mind over sports or politics or the weather or et cetera, then you're not doing God's work.
So it's not necessarily just the government, is it? It's exactly what Holly said. Yeah, no, because I'm 63 and don't feel bad. The other day, my granddaughter was walking across the parking lot and I was going, what's your name? So, I mean, in 2 Peter, the 13th chapter, it says, therefore submit everyone to yourselves, therefore submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether to the king as supreme or to governors, as to those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, for the praise of those who do good. For the praises of those who do good. When you were talking about the heart and how we do good because we have a good heart. Praises of those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you may put to silence the ignorance of the foolish man, just like yours, as free, not yet using liberty as a cloak for a vice, but as a bondservant of God. Honor all people. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. And honor the king. That's all it said. If you got an and to it, okay, go ahead. Oh, okay. I thought you were adding to this one. Okay.
Matthew 10:16, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. That's us out in this world. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And that's got your heart in the right place. You got to be thinking the whole time how God wants me to be, how I need to be Christ-like. But we are in a bunch of wolves around this world, and sin's out there, evil is out there.
That's right.
And
So
we need to be aware of that.
I wanted to talk about this because it's election season. People start getting heated about this or that. Different issues, different things that come up, and how, oh, well, you're wrong about this, and you're wrong about that, and you're wrong about this, and you're wrong about that. And maybe we need to look introspectively. Is that the right word? Tell me if that's the right word. Is that the right word? Did I use a big word? All right. I don't do that very often. So we need to look inside before we open up and let it go outside. This
The wise man controls his thinking, his mouth.
Yeah, but Tim told us, ain't no man control the tongue. No man control the tongue. But there's some other things that I wanted to, let's honor our government. Let's pay our taxes. Let's do what we need to do to honor our government. Let's try not to talk bad about the people who are running our government. Let's try. Now, remember I said I got to thinking? So when I get to thinking about things, that's because I need to think about things. So I'm getting on to me. I'm stepping on my toes. I'm stepping on my own toes, yes.
I knew somebody who, anytime someone would try to draw him into a political conversation, she would say, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, I'm a member of the cocktail party. It diffused it, and it kept them from getting pinned in the corner.
And a lot of times,
She just said that.
yeah. And now I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you do not have the right to say, I believe this or I believe that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you don't have the right to get so mad at a brother because they don't believe the same way you believe. You don't have the right to get so mad at a brother because they believe differently than you believe and you cannot convince them to believe what they believe. You don't have the right to get mad about that.
When we feel persecuted because of our outside of our Christian belief or whatever, at the end of the day, Christ was hanging on the cross and he said, forgive me.
And let's see, was that some like governmental interference with somebody's personal life? I believe it was just, and what did he do? He went ahead and took it to the cross, didn't he? Can we? Can we give up a little bit?
I think about when Joshua saw the angel standing on the hill with the sword drawn. And he goes up to him and he says, are you for us or for them? And almost any Christian would think, oh yeah, the angel of course is for Israel. The angel replied, neither. But as commander of the armies of God, I've come to give you a message. And it's an interesting thing because this angel is looking at it saying, my vision is above you sheeple. You think that I'm involved in whatever little skirmish you have? No. I'm here on the behalf of God to give you a message, but I'm not for you or for them, even though from my perspective, one of those people was pursuing a righteous pursuit and the other one was not. The angel still said, I'm for neither.
Yeah.
I'm for God.
I'm for
and
God.
I think
and that's
if we
where...
think in that perspective, it would look very silly for two of us to be arguing and causing a commotion in the kingdom, and then the king says, what are you arguing about? Well, we're arguing about what this other king is doing. You'd be like, you're in my kingdom. Stop that.
Yeah. So, we know what happened yesterday, and sometimes we get frustrated and tense and want to really lash out. But there's some, I looked up some stuff and just, because I didn't want it to all be, I don't want us to be anxious about it. You know, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Philippians 4:6 says, don't be anxious about anything, by prayer and petition to thanksgiving, present your request to God. 1 Peter 5:7 said, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you.
Okay, wait, First Peter what?
1 Peter 5:7. I'm just going to go through a list of these. I'll give you a list in a minute if you want it. Luke 12:25 and 26. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you can't even do a little thing like that, why do you worry about the rest? Galatians 5:22-23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, self-control. Against such things there's no law. John 14:27 says, "Peace I leave with you. I do not give you as the world gives. I do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." 2 Thessalonians 3:16 says, "Now the Lord of peace himself gives you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with you all." And Matthew 20 says, "Teach them to obey things I've commanded you, and surely I am with you always even to the end of the age." We want to fight and we want to talk about government. Because we do that because we are worldly. And we are. We're in the world. We have to be in the world. We're worldly. But we need to be spiritual. And we need to take on the fruit of the Spirit, the love, kindness, gentleness, meekness. We need to use those traits when people start uproaring with us, to look into ourselves and say, no, I'm going to do what God wants me to do because He is the one that I am in His kingdom, not this worldly kingdom. We're blessed here in America. Blessed beyond control, beyond measure. We have whatever we need. We can get whatever we need. Other countries aren't like that. Sometimes I think it might be to our downfall that we don't trust in God the way we should, because everything is nearly handed to us on a silver platter. Trust in God. Don't be anxious. And don't get in a bunch of ripping and roaring fights and arguments. And let's not let worldly things separate us from Christian things. That's what I was going to talk about this morning. And then when I got finished, I was going to talk about the light. But we got 3 minutes, so I'm going to give y'all those 3 minutes. Y'all have a thank you for your attention and your comments. I appreciate it, and we'll see you back in a little bit in worship.